The moment you understand why a tiny soot-stained stove became one of the most decisive survival tools of World War II, you start to see the war from the ground level, the level where frostbite, starvation and morale could kill faster than bullets. It's the kind of detail military archives barely highlight, yet veterans mention with a quiet respect. Before we talk tactics, production or design, you need the hook that kept entire companies alive in the frozen trenches of the Eastern Front, in the Ardennes, and in mountain positions from Italy to Norway. Soldiers depended on an object smaller than a helmet, but powerful enough to decide whether a man made it to morning. This guide on the secret World War II, stove that kept soldiers alive in frozen trenches, breaks down the weapon behind the weapon, the heat source that turned -30 degrees death traps into fighting positions. Now let's get straight into the meat of it, because this isn't about nostalgia. It's about learning the mechanics of survival, understanding what the soldiers actually faced, and seeing how a simple stove became a tactical advantage. Understanding the stove's origins and why it became the quiet backbone of frontline survival begins with the brutal conditions troops actually lived in. The German Army, the Red Army, and even US units operating in the Ardennes learned fast the cold was not an environmental nuisance. It was a strategic threat. Frostbite casualties constantly rivaled combat losses. Fireplaces and open flames were too visible, too dangerous, and too slow. Armies needed something compact, low smoke, stable in high winds, and capable of burning whatever the trenches offered. This pressure gave rise to the trench-safe stoves, small metal units, often cylindrical, with a stable base and speed draft ventilation that allowed them to burn wood scraps, compressed fuel tablets, coal pieces, or even greased cloth. Explaining how the stove operated and why it worked reveals its tactical brilliance. Unlike campfires, which produced large flames and glowing embers easily spotted by snipers, these stoves produced high heat on minimal fuel and virtually no visible flame. The key was airflow control. Narrow air channels concentrated combustion, and a covered top plate diffused red glow. In Soviet designs, especially the infamous Burjuyka used in Stalingrad and throughout the Eastern Front, the metal walls radiated heat evenly, while a small chimney vented smoke away from trenches or dugouts, preventing detection. German Esbit stoves relied on hexamine tablets, lightweight, low smoke, and perfect for rapid heating under a poncho or inside a shelter half. You know, understanding what these stoves meant to morale and combat readiness really shifts your view of the war. A hot drink at 0300 hours wasn't a luxury. It was, well, a reset button. Soldiers badly needed warmth to restore circulation, keep their muscles working, and reduce the risk of hypothermia-induced confusion, which, honestly, was a real operational hazard. In diaries from the Eastern Front, you see repeated references to men thawing frozen rifle bolts near these stoves. Some units even staggered stove use in rotations just to keep sentries and machine gun crews from going numb during those blizzards. And if you've ever spent a night outdoors in cold conditions, you'll know that controlled heat isn't comfort, it's command over your environment. Now, discussing how these stoves change small unit behaviour, it really helps reveal their real battlefield value. In the Battle of the Bulge, American squads who managed to heat rations and melt snow into drinkable water kept their energy levels higher than units who lost access to heat. During the Finnish-Soviet Winter War, the Finns used ultra-small tent stoves that allowed reconnaissance teams to stay mobile and warm without giving away their position. Temperature alone made the difference between functioning carbines and frozen, jammed metal. Soldiers learned to warm magazines, gloves, boots and cleaning cloths on the stoveplate before heading out for night patrols. These aren't dramatic Hollywood scenes. These are the small-scale realities that determined whether rifles fired when ambushes broke out. Now, exploring how modern survivalists can use the same principles gives real value to this knowledge, especially under the title you're using. The lesson isn't to hunt down a relic stove. It's to understand why those stoves worked and apply the same physics. If you're building a cold weather kit, you want 3 things: a stable heat source, controllable airflow, and fuel versatility. A modern folding alcohol stove, a compact wood gas stove, or even a DIY hobo stove built from a metal can follows the same logic. Keep the base wide so it doesn't tip. Create a chimney effect by adding air holes in the bottom and exhaust holes near the top. Ensure your shelter has ventilation while still trapping heat around the stove. And above all, prioritize low-smoke fuels, dry twigs, tablets, alcohol gel, so your thermal signature remains low. If you're practicing winter survival, try heating water at night inside a trench-style snow wall or improvised foxhole. Pair the stove with a small metal cup so you can melt snow or warm hands fast. These aren't theatrics. They're real applications of the exact strategies soldiers used under far harsher conditions. Understanding how this small stove influenced trench design further enriches the historical picture. Soldiers carved recesses in trench walls specifically for these heaters, widening the lower section to catch coals or hold fuel. Some units installed makeshift reflectors from ration tin metal to push heat forward while keeping the stove obscured from aerial view. In dugouts, stoves were often placed on bricks or ammunition boxes to reduce conduction loss through frozen ground. These are simple, replicable steps anyone can test in a modern bushcraft scenario, and they work because they follow the same logic soldiers discovered by necessity. Recognizing the stove's legacy shows why it still matters today. Modern military forces still issue compact stoves because armies learned the hard way that heat equals readiness. From NATO winter kits to Russian field heaters, the DNA traces back to those desperate winters of the 1940s, when men learned that survival didn't depend on the biggest weapon, but on the smallest flame, controlled, hidden, and always ready. If you found this guide valuable and want more deep-dive battlefield survival history, make sure you subscribe to Battlefield Survival. Drop a comment and share this with someone who appreciates the overlooked tools that shaped the war.